everybody. I'm sorry I'm late today. I need to grab my bowls and my microphone, and I hope my internet connection remains intact. So let me mic up here. Hey Kristen, I'm sorry I'm late everybody, and I hope that the internet continues to work. It might not. If it shuts off, then we'll just do the sequel. I guess start another feed if we lose contact. So we had quite a few questions come in on the live feed, so let me go through those. And again, if we get cut off, I will put another live feed up, so you'll have to look on your notifications, and it'll tell you that I'm on a different feed. So we'll just see what happens. And I have a really, really crackly, creaky voice today, so just bear with me. Okay. So Gaia asks, when we have in synastry Lilith contact with a personal planet, how does the Lilith person feel? Is it the Lilith person who feels the lust most? Yes, because any contact, you are going to be coming through the lens of that archetype. So if it's your Venus to someone else's Mars, it'll be your Venus that picks up on it, that you feel things through. If it's your Lilith to somebody else's planet, it will be your Lilith that you interpret and feel things through. Stephen Arroyo says that we are made of energies that are expressed through planets. This question came to my mind after our last reading together. How do we feel and get in contact with these energies? You know, I've never talked personally with these people whose charts we analyze, but I can say I've been stroked by their energies and their voice during an interview. It was immediate, like having been hit by lightning. I'm very fascinated because astrology works whether we like it or not, and it doesn't wait for our permission. Well, that's true. We can choose to listen to it or to ignore it. Are there some placements or aspects in the natal chart that can enhance this kind of sensitivity? So it's archetypes that we're dealing with, universal human archetypes. And astrology is just pointing out what those archetypes are. It's just giving a name to them, because we all have mythology. It doesn't come from Greek or Greek or Roman mythology. That actually came from universal human archetypes. Archetypes don't come from mythology. Mythology is what described them originally. Mythology comes from archetypes. So that's what I would say that you want to access. Not you. What is the imagery behind that planet? What is the psychic need behind a planet? That's what we're really looking at. So energies are expressed through planets, but they're universal psychological tendencies, needs, stories, mythologies. And how do we get in contact with those or increase that kind of sensitivity? I think it's just invitation. It's invocation. Invoking the energy of a planet, inviting it, sitting with it in meditation. I look to the archetypes regularly, to the planets regularly, to help to help to assist me, to help me mainly to understand them and my personality self. So I think it's really about invocation and invitation, and just about giving a certain energy permission to come fully through. Elizabeth, how can her fire ascendant in Sagittarius be interpreted, since the chart, except for Neptune, does not show any fire planetary positions? And also, how does elemental lack reinforce the detrimental quality of my retrograde Virgo Jupiter? I don't think that I wouldn't say that it has an effect on the Virgo Jupiter. It's showing that there's only one part of the personality that is that's fiery, that has that fire quality, there's an active part of the chart. The rest are going to be, when we have either earth or water, air signs, they just have their different qualities. So the quality of air is only going to be exclusively found with the ascendant, which is fine. So we do have some amount of expression. It's actually a large part of our expression is the ascendant. So that's going to be helpful when it comes to finding a way of being comfortable with a part of your expression that is not generically in tune with the rest of your expression. So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just it just is what it is. Mila asks, can you look at my solar return chart and say briefly what are the main tendencies of the year at the first glance? Let's see. So I can't see the relationships between the planets very well when I have a solar return that is set up with the return planets and houses around the solar return itself. I tend to look at the solar return on its own, and then I'll use this form that you have here, Mila. So looking at conjunctions themselves, I don't see anything upsetting here. There's a lovely Chiron Sun thing going on. Conjunction in the first degrees of Aries there that can show a lot of wholeness, vitality restored, confidence restored. That looks like some really good stuff there. I love the look of that. Coming up to the Saturn return as well. So, Mila, if you want to post this with just the solar return, then I'll be able to look at it with more detail. But it's just really hard for me to see the relationships between the planets to give you a real good answer about what I'm seeing in the return chart itself. I do like the Pluto in the natal conjunct to the ascendant. That's also going to be showing a lot of stick-to-itiveness and awareness that can creep up upon you this particular year. So tag me and put it into the group, and then I'll be able to look at that. Oh, solar return Mars in the 7th house, I see. Conjunct the IC. Let me go back and look at that. No, it's also conjunct the cusp of the 4th house in the natal. Easy aspects from Pluto and Saturn. That's really hard for me to even see that when we have the planets on the outside of the birth chart. But easy aspects from Pluto and Saturn is just talking about ease of getting things done. non-distractibility, easy path to success, and the energy to back it up. So I think it looks fine from what I'm seeing here. Jonathan, elaborate on Pluto in the 12th house. And he answered it himself. If you listen to the comment, he talks about, he says, the only thing I can think of is if someone with this placement really wants to know about the collective unconscious, spirituality, what happens after death, what's hidden from us, but they're really scared of what they might find while exploring things of the 12th. Pluto in the 12th is a lot about finding wholeness through giving up, and through giving up all of our addictions. And that only means all of our addictions. So you can only be as free as you are unaddicted. And that's unaddicted to anything. Our addictions really determine, meaning our secrets, determine the height and breadth of our freedom. And in the 12th, any planet in the 12th wants to, is in the realm of life where we're going to experience some type of transcendence or ultimate connection. It's not a personal place, the 12th house. It's a collective place. And Pluto is actually very personal. So bringing a personal planet into a non-personal place means that we're going to be giving some things up. We're going to be making some sacrifices in that area of life. So yeah, Pluto in the 12th is a very potentially spiritual place to have it, if we are willing to give up. If we're not, then it can turn into a mess, because then we're going to end up with clinging and fear. So we have to surrender our addictions. We have to surrender our weirdness. We have to surrender our separateness when we have Pluto in the 12th. Let's see. Mary, with Uranus now in Taurus, if my part of fortune is also in Taurus in my chart, does that mean I'm having a part of fortune transit with Uranus? Oh, okay. I saw the question. I didn't look specifically at the chart, though. So Uranus is in Taurus. Part of fortune is in Taurus. So at least eventually, because Uranus will spend 7 years in a sign. So depending on where the part of fortune is, what degree the part of fortune is at, if it's in the early degrees, then you'll get that transit this year and maybe next year. If it's in the middle degrees, a couple of years. If it's in late degrees, 5, 6, 7 years from now. So I will look at that more closely. But I think that we did have a friend in the group who narrowed down the dates that was going to happen. But that does mean that the part of fortune will be in contact with Uranus, yeah. Jackie, I have a question regarding the full moon equinox, transit conjunct Venus, part of fortune and midheaven. Libra moon hits every month, but since this is a full equinox moon, can it be more significant? Yes, in that the astrological new year is really beginning. I don't know that it's going to be something that's really personally significant, because this is not like an eclipse that we would see a 6-month theme as a result of. So it would be, you could say, slightly more powerful, but it's not going to bring the themes of change and a 6-month window of time where we're doing that, like when we have a solar or lunar eclipse occurring there. So I think it would be marginal. Rachel, can you explain the difference between Vedic and Western natal charts? I understand the big difference is that Vedic uses the sidereal zodiac, and this sets all the positions of planets and signs back one. It makes for two significantly different charts for the same individual. How can they both describe the personality and life path of that same person equally? I've also read how Vedic astrologers consider the ninth harmonic chart to be the most important. It's the fruit born out of the first. One author in particular is keen on studying the ninth house to gain deeper insight into the first. For example, my Taurus sun is in the Gemini Navamsha. Does this mean that Gemini is a secondary, primary energy when it comes to my sun? And or that Gemini energy would be something that I had to develop at a sun level if I want to get into. Wait, let me find the next one. Or manifest the things described by my ninth house. In the, you mean the first house in the ninth harmonic? I think that's turned around. I'm also aware that my question, I'm mixing tropical and sidereal zodiacs. It's my Vedic sun is Aries. Just curious about the general thought and theory behind it. That's a good question, and it's probably one that a lot of people are wondering about. So, and don't worry about it, Gaia. You can talk. Yeah, anybody can talk about anything. You don't have to worry about offending me in here. You can talk about other astrologers. You can disagree. You can say whatever you like. I like dissent. So the difference is that one is using tropical zodiac, right? So that's why the signs are different. And one is using the sidereal zodiac, which is what they used in antiquity. The signs have changed. And so that's why we go with tropical. We go because the tropical begins at 0 Aries, the Aries point. There is no beginning or real ending to the Vedic chart, to the sidereal chart. And it doesn't, in my opinion, describe human behavior nearly as well as the tropical chart does. That's why I do Western astrology. If I thought that Eastern or Vedic astrology was better or more valid or psychologically helpful or emotionally helpful, then that's what I would be doing and that's what I would be teaching. But I don't find that sidereal charts are really good at describing the personality or one's psychology. So, the harmonic chart. Okay, no, here's a good question here. I don't want to skip this. It makes for two different charts for the same individual, but how can they both describe the personality and the path of that same person equally? They don't describe it equally. You're looking at two different methods of calculation. It isn't equal. So you want to pick one and you want to go with it. Do not mix Western and Eastern astrology unless you are a finished astrologer. If you do, then you're going to end up going into a rabbit hole. And that rabbit hole is usually within months of starting to study astrology, because we find out about sidereal and Vedic, and then starts the question, well, which one is more legitimate? It's not that one is more legitimate than the other. There's different. So you can't, I don't suggest mixing them. The only thing that's different is the signs. The signs are actually very important because they're describing essential psychological motivations that the aspects will or will not help to achieve, to arrive at. So, yeah, Ernst Wilhelm does use tropical signs, but yes, lunar nakshatras. That's an interesting way of calculation that he's arrived at, and that was the result of a lot of personal research on his part to see what really worked. And there's a lot of people that are coming from that. Astrology is his student, and she also uses the same system. So it's, sorry, I have a phone in here somewhere. I don't know where it is, though. So they're just different. It's not that one is better than the other. They're different, and I just find that tropical is better for describing human behavior. I'm not going to be a really good source of the question about the Namvasa chart and how to manifest the things described by the ninth house. You would have to ask a Vedic astrologer that question, because I'm not of that philosophy that is really at the basis of why certain things in Vedic astrology do or don't work or have validity. I used to do a lot more Vedic astrology, a lot more Eastern astrology. But as I've gotten to know myself better and gotten to know astrology better and my education has increased, I tend to get more and more away from Vedic astrology. And that isn't because it's invalid. That's because a lot of Vedic and Eastern astrologers are full of shit. They are full of shit. And they are basing their interpretations on 14th century understandings. They scare people a lot. They tell people really difficult things like you will never have children, or your husband will cheat on you, and you will die at age 65 from leukemia, and things that are not ever needing to be said to someone, even if you can't see it, even if there's an aspect that written out in neon letters that says this woman will never have children. It is completely irresponsible to say that to somebody. Completely irresponsible. And so I just have people coming to me all the time with crazy stuff that Eastern astrologers have told them, and especially male Eastern astrologers, where women have gone to them for help in their domestic situation, and they've been in a very abusive situation, and that male astrologer has told her that she needs to stay in that situation because that's the correct thing, because he's seen it. I've also had other astrologers tell people crazy stuff because they saw it. Not in the chart. They saw it. So, and I hear that all the time, that no, it didn't come from the chart. He said that he saw it, and that's something I hear a lot associated with twin flames. That, and I have people come to me all the time that have been to very reputable astrologers, even astrologers that we would know, that have told them some crazy ass shit, and I've had to really instill some reason into that. So you have to be careful. You have to be ethical. And I find that most Eastern astrologers, certainly not all, I'm sure there are wonderful Eastern astrologers out there. I'm just not cleaning up after those. You have to be ethical, and you have to be careful. And you can't be indiscriminate with what you choose to say to people, because you are helping people to make valued decisions on their lives. So that's the thing with Eastern astrology. I just tend to get more and more away from it, because the predictions, the analysis, the commonly understood analysis is very ancient, and really has not been updated to allow for anything fresh or anything new, and it's scary for people. So Rachel asks, oh, where did that go? Hold on. Rachel, I think your question has been cut off. Wait a minute. Did I really do that? Oh, maybe that was just a comment at the bottom. Okay. So Nazreen asks, can you talk about the most elevated planet in a natal chart and what role it plays in a person's life or personality? I read that it's what a person strives most to be and embody in their life. I'm not sure if that meant the things of that planet or the things of that sign. Is that what it is? Well, it's kind of like the one that's, closest to the midheaven. So it's the one that we want to grow up to be. It's the one that we see as our eventuality. So we relate it to the midheaven in that it's the one closest to the midheaven. It's the one closest to showing us what is the eventuality is going to be about us. So it's what we work towards. We employ that planet in what we are becoming. So it is important because it's going to be part of what we see, and you said it yourself, what we seek to strive or embody. You answered your own question, my dear. You guys often do that around here. Ginger, can we still count connections in the same sign even if they're not close in degrees? Usually, yes. They are going to show up in the same area of life and in the same style. So even in synastry, having something in the same sign and house goes a long way, even if it's not a conjunction. Kristen, my fiance's parents divorced when she was 2, and her father passed a few years later, shortly after his 30th birthday. She remembers only that everyone was emotionally in shambles after their sadness. Everyone, including her mother, only say extraordinary things about him, and we know they got married when they were young and got divorced about 5 years later. She doesn't know much about the parents' relationship, and we understand that you can't change the past. Things happen for a reason, destiny, but we're wondering what they probably thought of each other. And had he not have died, what could have been between them? I know it's kind of a pointless question, but knowing limited info, it appears that they loved each other a lot, and my fiancé and I are baffled as to how that could have ended. Below, as a response to this question, I pasted their individual synastry natal midpoint composite in Davidson because I wasn't sure what you would want. All right. So you are thinking ahead, my friend. I have to jump up and get more hot water before I get into this here. 1 second. All right, so I'm going to honey up my tea while I take a gander at this. Gander is American for look. Okay. That is one heck of a grand try. Okay, so synastry. Venus in conjunct to the moon in the synastry. Did you notice that one? Different comforts. Come on. This is the thickest honey ever. let's see a connection between the moons. 360, 550, 152. Oh, someone just called me the devil on another YouTube video. It happens. That's when I know my work for the day is done. Okay. So we see some good things going on here. So I have to look at the quintile from Moon to quintile Mars. Jeez, there was a lot of attraction there. Moon, Mercury stuff. Okay, so I'm looking at the midpoint. Differences in values that were probably revealed after a commitment. Opposition between Moon and Neptune, so they thought they were getting something way better than what they were actually getting. This is actually not a bad composite chart, but there's a lot of potential for disappointment because we start out on level 10, and where do we go from that? We can only go down. So it's high idealism there. So the idea of what they were going to get may not have, well, I can guarantee you, did not match the reality of what they actually got. And that's not unusual for a 2-year, even 2.5 years, when we have a Moon-Neptune issue. Because it's going to drop off after the infatuation wears off. After we get together, we start smelling each other, we use the bathroom after each other, we start arguing with each other, some of the truth about each other comes out. You got to pick up his dirty jockey shorts. This stuff is not romantic. And that's the cure for Neptune is Mercury, is everyday involvement. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was a case of Neptune. This is actually not an incompatible composite chart. And the communication was probably pretty good too. There was a lot of good feelings here for each other. But I think that what they planned and what the reality actually delivered was very different. And oftentimes that makes people think that the relationship was a failure when it really wasn't. The failure was acknowledging who you really both are. So I think there was actually a lot of good feelings that were going on here, and probably would have continued throughout their lives if they would have had more time. Looking at the Davidson, though, let me look at that too. Just still got a lot of good things going on there, and an opposition from Moon to Neptune. Just kind of disappointing because they had some rockin' good things that were happening here. Tanya, can you please explain these two transits and how they show up? Uranus square. I lost. Where did it go? Here we go. Uranus square the natal Mars for a man, and Neptune square the natal Mars for a woman. Okay, so transits. Uranus square natal Mars for a man. Depends on if he has a Mars-Uranus aspect already in his chart. If he does, then this is something that can trigger that very easily. We can get into accidents. You can make rash decisions, knee-jerk reactions to things, because we're already knee-jerk when we have Mars-Uranus aspects. So see if there is a Mars-Uranus aspect. If not, it's going to go much easier. We won't be jumping out of airplanes with no parachute. But it is something that makes us, it triggers the Mars in anybody. We're quick to react, and we are not concerned in the moment about consequences. So I remember I had a sibling that had this years ago. And it was a period of time where there was a lot of contention going on. There was a lot of acting out that was occurring there. And it's something like our feelings and our reactions are right on the edge. So all you have to do is make one false move, and we have some kind of reaction to that. So it can be very temperamental for people. Neptune square Mars for woman is going to be something that is a boundary crosser. Physical boundaries, sexual boundaries are what we're dealing with. Sexual idealization, a lot of passion, a lot of repressed feelings, sexual feelings can come out of us. And it's something that also can greatly diminish our energy. I'm having the opposition. So that's something that is leading to a tremendous amount of lethargy and tiredness. And you have to be really careful how you allocate your energy. You only have so much. When you have the opposition or the square, even the sesquiquadrate, you don't have your available amount of physical energy. You have a lot of sexual energy, not in my case, but in most people's cases, they're stimulated in some way. So they are feeling, what was the line in The Mask? It was a perfect line that he came up with. I don't know. He hands her a rose and says something like, "I'm feeling a little thorny." That's the one with the Mars square to Neptune. So we only have a finite amount of energy, a finite amount of there's a better word for it, of grit. No, that's not the word. Resiliency. That's it. I always forget that word. I got to write that one down somewhere. So our resiliency is very much compromised with the opposition or the square or the conjunction or the sesquiquadrate, the semi-square also. Conjunction is actually usually less troublesome for people than the hard aspects. But you have to cut back on what you're doing. And don't undertake big projects because you will have a harder time getting them off the ground. And I started my subscribership last year when I just had this coming in fully. So I was just starting to fall out when the subscribership came on. So that's something I've had to really push through, because that's something I added to my plate. So you don't, not saying that I shouldn't have done that, but you don't generally want to add things when you have this, because you have to work harder in order to maintain them and in order to grow them. And some of the things that we can put on our plate, the extras, they don't work out when we have the opposition or the square, because we simply don't have enough strength to see it through. So be careful. Okay, I think that's it for the questions that were there. I'm going to go on up and see what has come in. Quite a few. We had a lot of friends join us today. Oh, you're sweet, Jonathan. No, if I don't show up on time, it's because I'm having internet problems, or I was out somewhere and I don't have my phone and I couldn't get home, and I have no way to tell you guys that I can't get home. Oh, Christian, yes, you can look at the solar return by itself. It's more helpful because you can see the relationships between the solar return planets. So look at the solar return on its own, and then look at it next to the natal with houses. It'll give you more info. Okay, hey, Anita. Hey, Brittany. You guys haven't been with us in a while. Okay, Nancy. I have a question about my daughter's chart. How would you interpret Sun in Virgo conjunct the South Node in the 4th house? She's a homebody. That's what we would expect to see. Excuse me. I'm still coughing. Who is fairly domestic, enjoying hobbies like gardening, cooking, painting, and writing. I could have given birth to that girl. She's worried that having this conjunction means that she's stagnating in her That's all I've got. So I'm thinking stagnating in her current choices or current trajectory of where she's going. Sun in Virgo conjunct the South Node in the 4th is going to be more careful about changes and discriminating about changes. The South Node and the Sun, the Sun is happy to be at the South Node. It's not driven at the South Node. Stagnation is something that can probably happen from time to time in her life, but she's probably got other things going on that can sort of push her or elevate her out of that tendency to just stay. I would look at aspects to the Sun, and you could tag me on her chart again if you can go down and find that again. I'll take another look. But we do have to propel ourselves consciously to make changes or to bring in something fresh. Anytime we have a planet at the South Node, and the Sun is very much about the identity, just getting comfortable and not wanting so easily to evolve. So it'll happen anyway, because there is such a thing as transits. So if she's feeling that she's stagnating or things are getting a little stale here or there, we have to take conscious efforts, make conscious efforts to mix things up a little bit with South Node planets. But she's a youngster. She's going to be okay. Jonathan, yes, you do have a lot of personal planets in impersonal houses, and the 11th house is why we all like you, because you're so sparkly. The 11th house is a fun place. There's a lot of good things going on in the 11th house. It's acceptance. It's the opposite to the party house of the 5th house. So they're both fun. Hey, Rosalie. I was watching a video about a cat named Rosalie today. So sweet. A blind cat that it's this wonderful man on YouTube that has this such a cute channel. He has cats that have some issues, medical issues. He takes them in, and he has one cat that was born with no eyes. And Rosalie was this teeny cute little kitten with just a little bit of vision out of the one corner of her eye. And you could not tell that these cats were not had full sight. They were just getting along so well. Anyway, it has nothing to do with astrology. It was just made me cry. Hey, Gayatri. Oh, Paige, I have not heard that. That wouldn't surprise me. And in fact, I'm not sure if it's still the case in the East, but I believe that you have to be from a certain caste to be an astrologer, or a certain place of birth to be an astrologer in India. And that's my impression. I'm not sure if that's still the case anymore. Not that it's bad or it's good. It just can make finding more open-minded astrologers a little bit difficult. Nakshatras are very interesting. Absolutely. There are elements of Vedic astrology that are very interesting. And if you aren't getting into the rabbit hole of mixing the two or getting confused about why the two aren't supporting each other, because when we do fall into that rabbit hole, it creates a lot of confusion. I find that it can just keep people from progressing as fast as they could in their learning. So it's almost like if we're learning a language and then we find a language, it's very similar to the language that we're learning. So we start looking at both of them and trying to learn both of them at the same time, and how are they different, how are they similar, and then mixing them and intermingling them. We're probably going to take longer to learn either one of those languages. So I suggest that you concentrate on one and then pick up the other after you feel like you've mastered one system. It doesn't matter if it's Eastern or Western, or just study both at the same time without trying to mix them and without asking questions such as, is this more valid than this? It isn't. It's just different. Gayatri, how would you describe composite Sun conjunct the North Node? We both have an agreement when it comes to what we're mutually going towards. Men, male figures, authority figures, will probably have something to do with the destiny of the relationship or the direction of the relationship. There's a lot of agreement about what it is we, on a soul level, want to experience as a blended couple. So that is something that can show some chances of success in a relationship, because we feel like we are about the same things, at least in that pocket of the relationship. Anita, the recent full moon in Libra landed in your 12th house, though I'm a Libra rising with my ascendant at 2 degrees. So would you look at the full moon transit for me from 12th house perspective, or for the first house view, as it was pretty much conjunct to the ascendant? I would look at the ascendant. If it's within even 5 or 7 degrees of the ascendant, I would look at it as a conjunction to the ascendant. But with some 12th house implications, meaning that we could have some changes or evolution in spirituality, or maybe have some things that you don't know about yourself. Some of your blind spots, which are very much about happening in the 12th house, some of those might be revealed. You're so cute, Jonathan. I will probably be taking the Able dogs, yes, on some minor excursions this year. But I plan to be moving to the country. I'm hoping to be selling this house late spring and maybe into the early summer, and moving to the country. So I will be able to do these live feeds while I'm riding horses. It's going to be so much fun. Let's see. That's true, Douglas. The lens of our culture does alter everything that passes through it. Rachel, so with my Leo moon in the 11th, I'm looking at a future as a rock star. Could be. I think that is a classic description of what that could lead to. Absolutely. That's cute. The North Node return is when we tend to see, Chi asks, could you tell us about the North Node return? So the North Node return is when we're experiencing a lot of karma coming back to bear. It's like we've been out doing for a long time, and then we come back to center. So that's what we could call it. We come back to center. It's almost like, when you're a yoga class and they say, come back to center. That's what we're doing when we have the North Node return. And it's starting, and for a lot of people, it's not hugely significant. For other people, they go back and it actually did start out some very, I don't want to say fated. I don't like the word fated. I don't believe in fate. Fate is only happening if you don't believe you control your own life. But significant events can happen around the North Node return. That's true. That's true. My son also has to touch the stove to see if it's on. That's funny. In Ireland, I have to touch the cooker ring to see if it's on. That's interesting. We say we have to touch the stove to see. It's the same thing, I'm sure. Or if in England, it would be the auger, right? We have to touch the auger to see if it's hot. Oh, the cooker is on. I see. It's just a mistype. That's funny. Yeah, Rachel, a professional rock star, if it's on the 10th and 11th house cusp. Caitlin says, I'm having a desire to move and wondering if June would be a good time. Also, I seem to be more prone to addictive tendencies in the past year, and I think I had Mars oppose Neptune in my solar return last year. But I don't have an astrological program to tell me for sure. Is that what it was? Let me look. You're in my program. So this was last year you were looking at, right, Caitlin? Let's see. Oh, it's already 5:30 almost. I can't believe it. So that, okay, so I'm looking at this here. It actually looks pretty good. You do have a square between Neptune, Venus and Neptune, so we are dealing with some issues of idealism. Let me look into 2018 into 2019. I think that's what you're talking about. Past year, the solar return chart last year. Okay. Yep. Yeah. And Uranus in conjunct to the ascendant. That's a big breaking up of patterns. Infusing new things into what you've always been doing. And we also have a square between Neptune and opposite. I don't see Mars opposite Neptune. I see Uranus opposite Venus. That is a lot of different and new types of relationships or new opportunities presenting themselves. It's breaking up our pattern in our relationships. I don't see... I see Moon conjunct to Pluto. Let me look and see if that was the 2019 you were looking at after all. I don't see that in 2019 either. Next year's solar return looks infinitely easier, Caitlin. We are dealing with some Venus-Neptune stuff, but that's getting less. That's peaking more this year. So things should become much more clear. Sun opposite Moon in the solar return for next year, the one that starts this November. That's a pivotal year when it comes to getting down to the bottom of the relationship between your wants and your needs. It's going to be psychologically extremely important. You will come to some major realizations about seeing what is your part, what is other parts, other people's part, and then a repolarization can occur. So there's a lot of getting down to the bottom of things and then getting past them in the solar return chart for next year. You are probably still dealing with some of those tendrils of addictive tendencies coming from where Neptune is, but all in all, this is really about blasting out of some primary patterns there. I would look forward to it. Ginger, Sun sesquiquadrate Moon in Synastry. So that's a hard aspect between the Sun and the Moon. So we're going to have a hard time when it comes to figuring out what the role is. Who's going to wear the pants? Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to take out the dog? Who's going to wear the apron? We have to work that out. Sometimes we have to renegotiate that in a relationship that has hard aspects between the Sun and the Moon. So the domestic environment tends to be a little bit, have more friction in it when we have hard aspects between the Sun and the Moon. But this is something where you can come to some agreements through understanding the gender role that each one of you is currently playing, and have compassion for that. But this generally does indicate some friction in the relationship when it comes to the wants of the Sun person and the needs of the Moon person. Okay. Simone, can you please explain what transit Neptune conjunctive progressed midheaven at the same time transit Uranus conjunct to the natal ascendant means? So transit at the midheaven is going to be transit of Neptune at the midheaven is going to be bringing some sensitivity, idealism, artisticness, lack of boundaries, searching for something more, bringing that all to the midheaven. So generally things are not as solid at the midheaven when we have Neptune transiting that or an aspect to it. We can be having an identity crisis related, well, not really an identity crisis, more like a crisis of career, a crisis of purpose. What is my purpose? Redefining that purpose. Letting more spiritual things come in. Allowing more esoteric concepts to lead the way. Becoming much more in contact with our intuition rather than our need to do or to build or to respond. Having at the same time Uranus conjunct to the ascendant is we're going to be acting out in some spontaneous ways. We are going to be breaking up patterns, big ones, at the ascendant. So innovation that we never have had in us before can come out. It can be more inventive, more original. We will most likely change our look when we have Uranus crossing the ascendant. We're more rebellious. This is a really good time to be an anarchist because we are feeling like it's okay to be free for a while. It's okay to expand. It's okay to give the world the middle finger for a while. So there's a window of increased opportunity when it comes to finding outlets of free self-expression. Ginger. Oh, yikes. So you have the moon that you're experiencing that hard aspect in. That's a difficult thing. Hey, Valentina. Mara asks, how, I said it right. I think I said your name right, Miss Zazo. It's the first time for everything. Mara asks, how about North Node conjunct the midheaven in the 9th in Capricorn? North Node is conjunct Mars. Midheaven is conjunct Jupiter in the natal. So you must mean in the composite chart? Or is that transit? So North Node transiting conjunct the midheaven. When North Node is conjunct Mars and midheaven is conjunct Jupiter in the natal. So then the North Node will be transiting Jupiter as well. The North Node transiting the midheaven is looking for us to take, how do we want to put that? Like spiritual responsibility for our lives. Take responsibility for the spiritual course that we will be taking. Take responsibility for what it is that we know within ourselves that we really, really want and we feel we're driven towards. So we could start pursuing the things of the North Node at the time that it transits the midheaven. Nancy, okay, good idea. I'll take another look. I like the 9th as well. I think the 9th and the 8th or the 9th and the 11th and the 5th might be my favorites. Gee, I'll bring my phone. I'll have a really good internet connection on my phone when I am riding horses and answering questions at the same time. Ginger, you would want to look at the midheaven, what's going on around there. You'd want to look at the 6th house, what's happening in the daily life. And you'd want to look at the sun. What does she want? What is her expression really about? My daughter was recently asking me, what should I be? What should I be when I grow up? And what kind of job should I have? What kind of education should I have so I can get the kind of job that I think I want? And I said, that's really not the right question to ask yourself. You have to ask, what kind of life do I want? What kind of future do I want? What is my vision for my life? And given that this is my vision for my life, how can I get paid to support that vision? So I, suggest that you reverse engineer the problem. You look at what it is that you want to arrive at. And then you look back and say, well, if I want this to be my life, if I want this to be the meaning of my life, then this may be the type of career or pursuits that I'm going to have to get into in order to get there. So it's a lot easier if we look at the end, what do I want to get to eventually, and then, I think we just cut out there, but we seem to be back, and then look at what steps do you have to take right now, this moment, today, in order to get there tomorrow. But you can look at things like midheaven, sun, 6th house, 9th house also can show where we find our meaning in life or our vision in life. What's the difference between solar return and progression? They're very different. Solar return is just a snapshot of what's happening on the day that the sun returns to where it was on our place of birth. And that could happen the day before our birthday, the day of our birthday, or the day after our birthday. And it just shows us a snapshot of what's happening in a particular year according to transits. Progressions are our current psychological development. What are we currently grappling with at any one time? So transits are more like events. Progressions are more like mutations. That's funny, Rachel. Oh, I didn't look, Jonathan. I'll have to look back and see if I can find that. Kat, is it, let's see, what can I expect with my solar arc moon about to conjunct my natal moon? It's about 7 degrees and my moon is at 8 degrees. So that's like the new moon return, where we're feeling like we are coming emotionally full circle. It's like we've been, out learning and building impressions and memories and experiences, and then all that comes home to roost when we have the moons meeting each other, either in solar arc or in progression. It's just showing that there's sort of a coming back to innocence, coming back to square one when we have that. So we can actually feel very simple for a while, like we don't have a great deal of division that we're dealing with. Oh, solar arc Venus about to conjunct the natal moon. Okay, that's different. So we have preferences, social ability, love, material comforts coming to meet emotional comforts, safety, nurturing. This is a good time for establishing relationships, or for feeling like we're getting a lot of what we want, because our emotional preferences and our material preferences are very much in tune when they are meeting up with each other in a chart. And we may be starting a relationship at that point as well. Caitlin, you would want to look at probably more than your chart. You probably want to do some soul searching there. What is it that you really want in your life? And if motherhood is something that you feel like you would just be checking off the boxes, it may not be the right choice for you. If you feel like it's something you really have a burning desire for, then it may be something to really think about taking more seriously. You certainly have time. So if we're looking in the birth chart, then we would be looking at aspects of the sun, 5th house. Where do we get our expression? Also look at Jupiter. How do we deal with expansion? Do we like expansion? Do we not like expansion? I would look at the sun and Jupiter in the 5th house. How do you see enjoyment, risk, childlike things? And if that's a source of real enjoyment for us, and generally really take to parenthood. Oh, yeah, guys, I think we better wrap it up. We've been at it for an hour now, so you should look forward to that, Cat. That's going to be a nice conjunction to deal with there. That could bring more comfort, just a feeling of just, peaceful enjoyment. So I don't know if I'll be able to hook up with you guys tomorrow, possibly. If I can, then I'll announce it in the morning time, so you have some warning. And if not, then I'm sure we will be able to meet the day after. We'll see. But I'll make sure that we're able to put our heads together again here before too long. And you guys can always post questions in the meantime on the feed at any time before we meet again. So